Hi, I'm Sarah.
And I'm David. We got to talk about Big Brother 22 All-Stars. Everything's great. Everything's great.
Everything's great. But first, if you're new to this channel, please click subscribe and give this video a thumbs up.
And if you want to support us on Patreon, you can find that link in the description. Okay, so what are we doing today, Sarah?
Well, first we're going to recap Sunday's episode, which was super hard to watch. And then we will get into the Veto spoilers, the live feed spoilers, the stuff that happened over this weekend and today.
Yes. So let's talk about all of it. Okay,
this episode.
We are starting on the HOH competition, which kind of feels like when they got into the edit, they were like, ooh, this isn't interesting. We got to like show some flashbacks because like we don't really see a whole lot of like the puzzles coming together.
What? A 19-piece 3D puzzle's not interesting? Of a fire hydrant of all things?
Right. And you can't tell it's a fire hydrant until it's done. Other than that, it just looks like all these crazy pieces.
That literally was the only thing I was thinking about as they're putting it together. I was like, fire hydrant, huh?
Right.
What?
Is it because there are fires right now in California?
Right. Very on brand for California. Because they're in a loft, and so on the curb there might be a fire hydrant.
Sure. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I was like, this isn't like a hot, cool thing that we're making a puzzle. Okay. Anyway, yeah.
Right.
HOH, not interesting. So let's flash back to what was interesting.
Right. Yes. So let's look at Nicole ruin David's plan to keep Ian, or at least that's the way that David thinks.
Honestly, Big Brother said, no, we're going to give this credit to Danny, not Nicole.
True. Yes, I was intrigued by that. I was like, oh wow, this edit at the end, like there's just a couple of lines from Danny there where it's like, oh, Danny's the mastermind of this. I had no idea.
Yeah. Like all of a sudden we see DRs from Danny and she's like, so this is what we're gonna do. And I was like, oh, we're over here actually giving Nicole this credit, but no, Big Brother's not gonna do it. They're like, no, we'll give it to Danny.
Right. Yeah. But it starts with like all these handshakes, right? We see, you know, the David conversation with Ian where he shakes on he's gonna vote to keep Ian. And so then Ian goes to Da'Vonne and he's like, I got David's vote. And she's like, Ian, I think he's lying to you. And he's like, no. And he's like, well, go talk to David. And so she does. And she's like, she kind of talks to David like he's a 5-year-old. You know, she's like,
yes.
Ian said you shook on it. Did you shake on it, David?
Is this what we're doing? Right. Very much so. Like for weeks, this is her relationship with him. And he's like, yes. Like he doesn't get it. He's like, well, I've been 100% honest with you this entire game. What are you talking about?
I know.
Like,
all of David's frustration in this episode is totally misplaced because he just needs to look in the mirror and realize that he got here because he has been shady this season. So that's why people don't trust him. But even Kevin is skeptical, you know, like I think Da'Vonne goes from David to Kevin and she's like, he said he's in to keep Ian. And Kevin is like, is he?
Yeah, here we go. What is he? Like this is just like back to back together. Like, okay, well, I'll go talk to him now. And then he's like, huh? I loved it. I think it was in the DR. He was like, David's credit score is like negative 3,000.
Right. Which is true.
I love that because earlier in the season, David told Kaser that he had 0 equity when Kaser was on the block. And I was like, I'm sorry. Kaser is legitimately an all-star. So I'm just kind of glad that it came back.
Yes, right. But then, you know, David shakes with Kevin. And so, you know, Kevin then, instead of going back to Da'Vonne, we see him go to Danny. And he's like, Danny, David wants you to get the blood on your hands. So we've got the votes now to make a tie. And it's David's fault that we have the votes. And so now he wants you to get the blood on your hands. And she's like,
herein lies part of the problem with Da'Vonne and Kevin's game. They spill all their information to Danny They have from the beginning, and they continue to do so. And so Kevin just tells her everything. He doesn't just omit like some stuff. He's not like, hey, I think the votes are going this way. So like, are you going to break? He's not like just checking in. He's like, and here's all the information and make sure that you're really mad at David.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's how that went down.
Right. And she's like, you know, I'm just going to flip this around on David and I'm going to make him look bad. Like, that's not cool for him to want the blood on my hands. And so I'm going to flip it. And so then is that when we see her talking to Nicole? And she's like on the bed and they're talking and she's saying like, you know, you're not going to vote to keep Ian. Like you can't vote to keep him. And then we're going to frame David.
Yeah. You know, these moments are so weird. And it just makes me, because Nicole had already laid this plan out like the day before, at least, if not 2 days before. And I remember watching the feeds when Nicole sat there on the bed and was like, so what do I do? And I was like, why is she asking, what should she do? Like, does she just need like Danny to pat her on the back? Like, why is she asking? And then when I watched the show and this is how they piece it together, I think, did they sit in the DR with her and say, hey, we just need you to go ask Danny what to do? Like, was she given that direct, like, we just need conversation?
Oh my God.
So just get it started. That's what it seemed like. Because, like, why would she ask that? She had already laid out.
It was her plan. Yes, right.
But this is what they use.
Yeah. It was either producers prompting her or Nicole is some kind of like mastermind where it's like, I want the edit to show. I want the audience to see. I don't know. Like,
get it. Take ownership when you can.
Yes.
Like, it's a game move that you came up with. Like, you should have the ownership of it. But no, that's what you get for asking. Now it goes to somebody else.
Right.
Okay, I think this is when we like flip back to the HOH for a bit because we've got the vote set up.
The end of the HOH at this point. Like they're all, you know, they're a different. It's one of those that's really hard to tell how close it is, right? I don't know if it was close at all. People said Tyler was close. It kind of looked like Christmas was close. Like she was constructing it on the ground, but you could see she had like the fully formed top at least of the fire hydrant. But Memphis's is there and he rings in and they're not giving it to him. And then he just, I guess, had to like tighten it up, squeeze everything together.
Right.
And then he rang again and he is the HOH as we knew.
Yeah, they made it look like David was close, but that's also because they're editing this whole like pin the vote on David thing and David needs to win. So that's just for the edit. The only thing we really can tell is that Enzo and Nicole are not good at puzzles. That was just
Also, I think Kevin was doing a terrible job. And Kevin was, I remember watching the show, you know, we saw like 30 seconds of this competition at the end of Thursday's episodes. But Kevin was kind of just meandering. Like he wasn't running as much as I thought he would. And I kind of got the same kind of energy from him in the little snippets we got. He just was like really thinking about where these pieces were going to go. And I was like, a little life. Come on.
With purpose. Let's go. Keep it going. It's a competition. Come on. But yeah, so at the end of the day, ultimately, Memphis is the one that gets his fire hydrant put together. And here we are with this week that we are given.
Yeah.
With Memphis as HOH.
All right. Yes.
There we go.
So,
but actually, what's not as exciting is a Memphis HOH. So we don't even actually get to Memphis HOH. We're just back to this vote stuff.
I know. I'm watching the episode and like 2/3 of the way through, I'm like, Memphis hasn't been in this at all, except when he won HOH. Like, you know, part of that is because he had this whole thing, which we talked about in our last video of like, I'm not telling you the plan. I've got a plan, but like mum's the word. So there was nothing for them to really work with. But they are, you know, they go immediately from Memphis won the HOH to Da'Vonne's in with Danny and Nicole. And I'm like, Da'Vonne, get out of there. Don't talk to them. They are not your allies. But she's like, David flipped. I know. He flipped on me. He made me look like a fool. Like she's already going in on David. And I'm like, no.
Yeah, this is when the episode gets really hard to watch because she is so adamant about one thing and it's so 100% incorrect.
Yes.
And so, you know, like Nicole and Danny, like she comes at them and they're like, oh yeah, oh gosh, he didn't.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, and then she like storms off, and then there's a scene with her and David, and she's like, tell me she's like at him,
Yes.
and he's just being honest. He's
Yeah.
just like, I did what we agreed.
Mhm.
I did not flip, and she won't have it. She will not
No,
have it.
she won't. But like, again, I just feel like he needed to do a little more than just be like, I did what we agreed. Because for the last however long, she watched him be like, I didn't save myself. And he did, and eventually she found that out. So she's like, here we are again. And I'm not gonna get fooled twice. Like, I think that's where her head is very much.
Yeah.
Like, she's like, fool me once, shame on me, but you're not gonna fool me twice,
Right.
So she's just like not gonna believe him. And I feel like maybe if he'd been like, hey, like, let's not do this in the kitchen. Like, can we go into the lounge and talk about this in private? And then for him to be like, listen, I know that I lied to you about the power, but I did not vote to evict Ian. Like, I just didn't do it this time. You have to believe me. And like, let's find out who did it. But all he's giving her is, I did what we agreed.
Yeah, that's just who he is. Like this entire game. That's why he's kind of confusing, because you don't know if he's lying to you or telling the truth, because he just will be like kind of vague about things, and he'll just be like, no, this thing. And I don't know. I think inside of him, he thinks you would trust me. You would believe me. He doesn't have to keep going on the conversation. He doesn't have to convince you, I guess, because we've never seen him do that. We've never seen him plead and be like, dude, I cannot be more honest with you. Like, he just doesn't do that. And like, he gets riled up, and what they don't air, because you see him like go to 20, they don't air her calling him Uncle Tom.
Yeah.
Which is probably good that they didn't air that.
I know. I just like feel so badly for Da'Vonne here, because like, I mean, she said what she said and she has to take responsibility for that.
Yeah.
But I'm like, she is going to regret that when she finds out the truth here, and she's going to feel really bad. And that's just like unfortunate.
Right. But it's I mean, I'm not surprised that he got so worked up, and he just kind of like had to like go into another room and like vent and like scream and like, what? Like, oh, this game, really hard to watch, because then she's in the DR and she's crying and she's like, he's making my game harder. He's making this harder on me. He just screwed things up for me, when it's like, no, he didn't.
Yeah.
And she even asked really good questions in the DR. She was like, why would he do this? And I'm like, yeah, Da'Vonne, why would he do this?
Right.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
And he also was like, I was his biggest ally. And like, not really, but he does think of her as an ally. And so he wouldn't do it. That's
and like, just put a little more energy into thinking about the motivations of the other people who were supposed to have voted to evict Tyler, right? I keep forgetting, like, yes, they would, like, Nicole was supposed to vote to evict Tyler. Now, specifically Kevin, I think here, like, he talked to Danny. He was the one face to face, Danny, where it was like, this is not cool for me to have to break a tie. I'm not happy about this. I'm going to turn it around. I think she said that to Kevin. I'm going to turn this around on David. Why isn't Kevin then I mean, he kind of does, but I'm like, think about the person who's closest to Danny out of the four of you who could have prevented Danny from breaking the tie, and that's Nicole. Right. And Kevin does consider that, but he gives it a 5% chance of having happened. And I'm like, man, Kevin, again, I think we talked about that in our last video, where it's like, oh, you're there, but you're just too far away to really get there. You know,
they get that that's a possibility, but they have put so much into Danny and Nicole.
Yeah.
They think that they're working with Danny and Nicole. They think that they wouldn't turn on them. And that's just, unfortunately, that's what's incorrect.
And the other part of this that really sucked to watch was like when David kind of explodes and walks into the bathroom and the whole house hears it, then we get this like, you know, moment from Danny where she's like, my plan is working perfectly. And it just like feels extra diabolical in that moment. And it was like, oh, this just like, I gotta like shake this off. This is not fun to watch.
It's really not. It's really not. Okay, now we go to have-nots, I believe is what's next.
Yes, it's taco night into have-nots.
I do like that setup. That was pretty funny.
Yes.
Cody's just making some tacos.
Yeah, not eating. He's going to let everybody else eat first.
Yummy, yummy. These tacos are great. Let's get have-nots. Cody, that's on you. You know what? The fact that he came out to talk about have-nots and you didn't grab a taco.
Grab a plate. There were plenty of people with plates of tacos at that.
Who do you think you are? You will just you're never going to be a have-not? Grab a taco. Okay, buddy?
Yeah.
But before we even get to Cody, Da'Vonne is the first one.
Oh my God. This was even better than I could have imagined, really.
Ew, it was.
Like, the pettiness of this whole exchange. Like, first of all, Christmas is there stuffing her face with tacos during the have-not meeting. Like, she was one who was smart enough to actually grab some food.
Yeah.
And just the juvenile nature of Christmas's reaction was like, God, this is, you prove to us over and over again exactly who you are.
Over and over again. And like Big Brother goes with it. They're like, oh, she's serving us a platter of crazy. We are going to show it for the world.
We will have second and third helpings of that crazy. Thank you.
Yes. She's like, what? Like, totally shocked that Da'Vonne's like Christmas. Yeah. And then circles back to it and is like, oh, really? She like full on makes a scene about, why not Kevin? I heard you talking about that. And then BB's like, let's show the psycho up on the balcony. Oh,
it's so insane.
Gosh. That cutaway was priceless. They could
so good.
Not make her look crazier. I mean,
they were like, find me that shot of this moment where Da'Vonne's talking about, joking that she's going to put Kevin on slop, and find me the shot of Christmas eavesdropping from the loft.
Oh my gosh, that was so good. I mean, I don't know that moment in real time. They could have been talking to her, but the way it looked in that cut was that she was like watching them,
right, and listening to their conversation. And it's so stupid. It's like, Christmas, are you crazy that you think that they're just gonna pass slop around in their little friend group? For real? Like, you actually think that Da'Vonne's gonna pick Kevin over you who put her on the block? Like, what is going on in your head?
She is delusional. That is insane. And honestly, she has brought it up every day since. She's still bringing it up. She's still talking about it.
Yeah.
She is so, she's shook. She is upset and shook, and she can't believe it. Yeah. And she legit wants to get Da'Vonne back.
And it's real because we get in the diary room where she could be like, I know this is game, like I knew, but like I had to make a scene at the meeting and blah, blah, blah. It was strategy. But we get in the DR and she's like, well, now I know she holds grudges and it's tit for tat and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yes, that's the easiest choice for Da'Vonne to make because you wronged her. So now she's wronging you and you're even. It's done.
That's you opened the door. And she like just sort of like softly served it back to you because it's not putting you on the block.
Thank you.
This one's bigger than this one.
Yes.
But no, Christmas, I mean, my gosh, the grudge she is holding is insane. Yeah. And then David picks Cody and Cody's just like, well, I guess I don't get a taco.
Yeah.
Nope.
Oh, they're just so used to calling all the shots. So whenever any little thing doesn't go their way, they like freak out. It's crazy.
Freak out. They can't handle it.
Then, then Sarah, didn't you love this scene in the hot tub with Christmas and Danny and Nicole talking about how much they want a woman to win Big Brother All-Stars after they sent Keisha, Nicole Anthony, Janelle, Bailey, and pretty soon Da'Vonne out the door. But they want a woman to win. That's what this is about.
Scene is just a burn. This is just Big Brother burning these girls. There was no point in showing this scene at all. This scene is old. This was back when Christmas was HOH and they were trying to sweet talk her into backdooring Tyler.
Yeah.
There was no reason to show the scene other than to be like, haha, these women want a woman to win, but they're voting all the women out. Haha, look at them. And then, haha, look at Nicole just busting her butt.
Right. Yeah. Falling on her face. Apparently it was like, it was also like during a booze delivery or something. So maybe she'd had a glass of wine and tripped on the way out of the tub.
I was like, I can't believe it. They were just like, haha, let's make fun of these girls real quick. That's what that was.
Yep.
Ooh, good laughs. Okay, back to being serious.
Yeah, so now we're in the bathroom, I think, and Da'Vonne like won't even talk to David. He's like, "Can we talk about this?" And she's just walking away, not even acknowledging him. That relationship is just like toast. Like she's just not even interested in entertaining any kind of justification or explanation or what have you from him.
Yeah.
So then we see him, this is not necessarily in real time in terms of the order of which these things happen, but then we see him go in to the HOH. Oh, right. Memphis is the HOH this week, and we got to check in with him.
I'm sorry. Who was it? It was Memphis. Okay, got it.
The only one-on-one that we are seeing in the episode.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, this one was an interesting one-on-one because he walks in and he's like, "Oh, you want a seat at the table? Here we go.
You got it.
I'm going to give you a business deal." And David's like, okay. And we see him offer the whole thing up about not taking anyone down if you play veto. And they shake on it. It's like, okay. And we find out in this moment, which we weren't sure about on Friday with our video, but from Memphis's DR, he does want David out. And he's just using this to get him to not gun for the veto. This is his way of hoping that he doesn't, don't put him on the block. He can't play, he doesn't have to play veto necessarily. And then if he does, to not gun for it. Because he wouldn't want to be in that position to take someone.
He wants to safely be able to backdoor David. This is his way of doing that. I never really know what to believe in David's DRs because part of me is like, does he just say whatever the producers tell him to say? But he says, like, you got to make allies in this game. Like, this is important. He may genuinely be feeling like, well, I'm screwed with Da'Vonne and Kevin now. Like, that's never going to be repaired. So I guess I got to try this Memphis thing. Otherwise, I got nothing going for me. So
right. I mean, he really doesn't. He's in a real bad place. So take whatever deal it is, shake the HOH's hand and take it. But obviously what he doesn't fully realize is that means his two allies who don't trust him go on the block. So we end the episode with the noms, which are David and Kevin.
Yes. And David is saying Da'Vonne and Kevin, right?
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say David? Yeah. Okay, Da'Vonne and Kevin.
Yes. And Memphis blames it on the veto play from last week. Veto's the most powerful, tool in this game, and you chose to use it. And so I gotta do this. It's your own, you did it yourself, that kind of thing. And David is in the DR saying like, I'm gonna play to win veto. So he shook Memphis's hand, but maybe he wasn't serious. Now I'm like, okay, that's good news. Great. You're not like just doing what he's saying. You didn't end up on the block. And now you are realizing like, oh, so that's done. And now I can actually gun for veto and who cares?
Yeah.
And then they tease us that Zingbot is coming back on Wednesday. So I don't know what to do with that in terms, because we were joking in our last video about like, oh yeah, okay, the neighbor who moves in on next Thursday is going to be Zingbot, but they specifically said Zingbot's on Wednesday.
Right.
And so I don't know.
Yeah, because Zingbot is Veto. So Veto is Wednesday. So I'm pretty sure that means he's not the neighbor. I mean, it's interesting that it's the same week since people were like, the neighbor's going to be Zingbot. But if it's Zingbot on Wednesday and a neighbor on Thursday, then that does not line up.
Right.
And we did get a couple hints about the Zings on feed. So let's go into spoilers, David.
Okay. Let's do it.
Ready? And
Spoilers. Yeah.
Spoilers.
I think that was pretty good. I think that
so
was
good.
decent.
So good.
Okay.
All right, let's start.
Where do we start?
Back. Let's start back.
Okay.
We talked in our Friday videos about one-on-ones. We knew that Memphis had made this deal, but he had given Da'Vonne some hope of like, I want you around a little bit. So we thought Kevin was the target.
Yeah.
I wake up Saturday morning, turn on the feeds, and Memphis is telling the people who were picked to play Veto that his whole plan is to backdoor David.
What?
And then they don't need to gun for the veto because he just needs to win it so he can do this whole backdoor plan. And first off, my head was like exploding that this whole messy plan was concocted just to backdoor last year's first boot. Like,
I know. Why is that? What? We're really like expending all this energy for a backdoor for someone who played one day of the game before this season? Like, okay. And David hasn't even been a comp beast because Memphis was like, I didn't want him gunning for this veto. And I'm like, even if he was, like, I don't know if David was going to win this veto. Like, you really didn't need to do this whole thing. But what I did think was interesting, you're right. Like, he's saying, throw it to me. But he kind of doesn't care because he tells Da'Vonne and Kevin also about like, the whole point was for me to backdoor David. So now this is perfect. Those people are going to throw it to me or you, like Da'Vonne or Kevin. If any of us three win it, it's fine. It doesn't matter. I don't care which one of you comes off the block. I just want to make sure David gets up there. Yeah. But like a couple of interesting things happening here. First of all, Da'Vonne and Kevin both had house guest choice for veto, and they didn't pick David. They picked Danny and Nicole. So it's Tyler, Danny, and Nicole who are the veto players. And both Kevin and Da'Vonne had a chance to pick David, and they both trusted him so little that they didn't pick him. So he was like, this is best case scenario. You both had the chance to pick him and you didn't. Great. Like this could not be working out any better.
Yes. And this is more to like Kevin and Da'Vonne are just keep having these missteps. It also to Danny's game of like how she has just like kept Da'Vonne in her pocket, and they didn't even realize that putting the trust in these three with the whole vote flip was going to pay off like this. But here we are in this crazy world. I honestly feel like this whole plan was just to, I'm going to call Memphis a jerk, okay? I fully believe Memphis is a jerk. I think this whole plan was very jerk-ish for him to, like, make this deal with David, and then he's basically backing on the deal. If he had won veto and at the veto ceremony been like, whoever come down, I'm going to put David up, that would have been a very jerky move, and he would have felt all powerful. Memphis probably has a different name for it. He probably thinks it's like a very like badass or manly.
Brilliant,
I don't know what he thinks it is. I call it jerky. He probably has a different word for it.
Yeah.
But I just thought it was unnecessary. But here we are. He's warning the people, don't really gun for it. David's my backdoor plan. Of course, Da'Vonne and Kevin are happy to hear this. But you know who's not happy to hear it? Tyler.
Mr. Tyler Crispin. And he tells Cody, and Cody is also not happy to hear it.
No.
And I get this from the sense of they're both kind of or have been trying to pull David in, or not necessarily work with David really, because I think they got burned once and they're not going to make the mistake again, but they definitely view David as an asset, as a number for them. Yeah. And they also look at David and they're like, he's an island. He doesn't have anybody. This whole thing blew up with Da'Vonne and Kevin. So why would we get the guy who's on his own out instead of splitting up this duo that we know is a duo? Like, let's split up Da'Vonne and Kevin. That's so much better than getting David out. So they're not happy with this plan.
No, I mean, they can call David a lone wolf or alone because that's what it looks like, but they do use him as an asset. Like David does think that he is somewhat aligned with these guys, Cody, Enzo, and Tyler. So yeah, if they were given a duo that the girl is closer to the other girls or this guy that they're close to, no, they're going to keep that guy. So they are like mad at Memphis. No. And Tyler was like, so therefore I think I will gun for this veto because I don't want this to happen. So that's what happens. Tyler guns for it. Actually, Danny, I think everybody was gunning for it, to be honest.
That's the sense that it,
Tyler wins.
Yeah.
Danny comes in second. Then Memphis comes in third. So Memphis is salty when we come back.
He is like a grump in this house. Like he's just so bitter that he doesn't have this power that he was supposed to have. He was supposed to win this. And it's one of those like big maze comps in the backyard, which Tyler played on BB20. So I'm like, I don't know if that gives you any kind of leg up. I'm sure they like change it enough to make it different.
Maze though, guys.
Yeah, totally a different maze, but like he did well in his season. He lost to just Casey, I think. So, you know, when I saw spoilers that it was going to be that, I was like, "Ooh, Tyler was good at it before. Presumably he will be good again." Sure enough, he's winning it. But we see afterwards, Memphis and Tyler are kind of talking privately. Yeah. And Memphis just like can't even contain that he's annoyed here. And he's like, well, the whole point of this was to get rid of David. So if I knew that you weren't going to vote, or if I knew that you weren't going to, you know, keep the nom or pull someone down with the veto, you know, I would have put David on the block in the first place. And I'm like, well, guess what? Nobody knew. Nobody knew that the plan was to backdoor David. Only you, Memphis, and that was by your own design.
And that's what Tyler said. He was like, you didn't tell us your plan. Yeah, you dodo. Like, I could not believe he said that. Well, I would have just put him up myself then. And I'm like, yes. Like, you have to have support from your group if you're going to, like, do a thing.
Right.
Not everyone just blindly follows. Gosh, it was so... This was really entertaining for, like, 5 minutes, this whole thing where Memphis was so salty. And Tyler was, like, just, like, calmly, like, Kevin and Da'Vonne are a duo. And I think the girls are with Da'Vonne. So, like... I really don't see why we would backdoor David right now. And, you know, Memphis is like mad. And then Cody comes in next and Cody's like, why would we change the noms? This is great. Let's get Da'Vonne out. And so Memphis is like, fine.
Yes.
And then he like pouty and doesn't fight it anymore.
Yeah, right. So it's Tyler and Cody who are kind of leading this charge that eventually convinces Memphis, like, fine, we don't have to get David out. We can like get Da'Vonne out this week. He's not thrilled, but like ultimately, you know, I don't know that it matters that much. You know, Memphis had Da'Vonne in mind for something he wanted as part of his plan, but I don't think this necessarily like blows up his game, you know, by any means.
No, of course not. As far as they're concerned, all three of those outsiders have to go.
Right. So Da'Vonne is now very much the target. I think that maybe...
Officially, we should say officially the veto ceremony happened today.
Oh, yes.
Tyler gave Da'Vonne a heads up this morning before the ceremony, and it sounds like she had a pretty spicy speech. But we haven't seen any speeches yet, so I don't know if we'll get to see it.
I know.
She did call. It sounds like she called some people out, or vague people. I don't know if she said names. But so he did not use it, and Da'Vonne is 100% the target, and I don't see a chance for her to be saved.
I don't either. Now, as far as the votes go, do you think Danny and Nicole might vote to keep Da'Vonne, or are they just going to see where the tide is turning and it's going to be unanimous evicting Da'Vonne?
Yeah, so, you know, at first, here's the thing about Danny. I've been waiting for her to, like, go against these people, but she is just, like, slowly has lost power, and I think she might start realizing it. I don't know if she has realized it yet, but she was like, yeah, we're going to convince Tyler to use the veto. When Da'Vonne's like, no, Tyler's not going to use it. She's like, of course we're going to convince him. No, they didn't convince him. And she's like, you guys, Kevin should go. He's the one gunning for you guys. Like, Kevin should go. We should save Da'Vonne. And the guys are like, no, we're going to vote out Da'Vonne. And that's it. Like, she has no power with them. She tried. And then she was like, well, I guess I can't, like, really push it because they're all telling me no. So, like, hello, Danny, you have no power. You have, like, released your game over to Cody, and you are now at whatever.
Yeah.
Cody, whatever. They'll let you know when they're ready is basically where we are with that. Yeah. So no, I don't think Danny and Nicole are going to vote for Da'Vonne. Ultimately, they're going to tell her, I'm sorry, you don't have the votes. So we're not going to vote for you. The only vote she might get, ironically, is David, because David has already promised Da'Vonne his vote for whatever weird reason.
Right. Yeah.
And David is just out there on his own, so he might just give her one vote, even though the house is going a different way. Like,
yeah, I mean, David's just playing a different game than everybody else, right? And he has been all along, but like this week specifically, he like within the past couple of days, maybe today, you know, we saw some conversations on the feeds between him and Da'Vonne, and he's saying like, outside of the game, do you think I'm a decent person? And she's like, I don't even know you. Like, we spent all this time trying to make this game relationship work, and it fell completely flat, obviously. So I don't know if you're decent. And he's like, just trying to save face. And so, you know, I think he might vote to keep Da'Vonne. He made some comment about like, oh, I would never vote an African-American female out of this game. So maybe she does have his vote, but it ultimately is not going to matter. Like the rest of the house is doing what they're doing. And of course, David is in the dark about that and has no idea what's going on.
Right. The solid crew of Cody, Tyler, Enzo, and Christmas are not going to budge their vote. They are voting Da'Vonne out, period. So that's it. So yeah, if David wants to end up ultimately going with the house, he can, or give her a vote. Who cares? You know,
right?
Voting with the house is dumb. Why not give her a vote? But yeah, I mean, it's so sad to watch all of this miscommunication and mistrust go down. And obviously after the show is over, Da'Vonne and David have like got to have a coffee date and like work some stuff out.
Yeah. Well, Da'Vonne may have some realizations immediately in the goodbye messages, right? Because there's talk about Christmas and Tyler telling Da'Vonne about Nicole in their goodbye messages. So Da'Vonne may have that information, but we've also now got Nicole trying to find the perfect time to tell Da'Vonne that she voted to evict Ian, not keep Ian, that she was the flip vote, not David. But Da'Vonne has been coming to Nicole recently with things like, I'm asking as a friend, like, did you vote to evict Ian? Yes or no? I need to know, have I been looking like a fool trashing David for the past week? And it's like, yeah, you have, but Nicole is still not coming clean yet. She's still standing by. I voted with you.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so it's one thing what Nicole/Danny came up with and what they accomplished was pin a vote on somebody else and, you know, get away with a couple things. That's a great game move. There's nothing wrong with that. What they didn't realize was that it would just sort of fall into this week's eviction. Da'Vonne's not being evicted because of any of this, but it kind of feels like that just happened. We fought. She and David fought. She's on the block. David was saved. It's all very weird and sketchy. Like, why wasn't David on the block? Now I'm the target and being evicted. It just kind of like fell in together like dominoes a little bit. So the fact that Da'Vonne keeps like checking in, just like she believes Nicole completely, but she like still checks in every once in a while. Is like, because David's just like so adamant, like, no, I did not flip. And so she's like, Nicole? And Nicole can't handle that. We saw it all last week with Ian. She's like, he keeps asking me. Like, he just needs to go. Like, can't keep asking me. And now she's like, Da'Vonne can't keep asking me all week. Like, she just needs to go. Like, I can't handle this. And like, Danny was actually being like level-headed today and was like, she just doesn't want to look stupid. Like, that's we all just don't want to look stupid, but you get it, right? And Nicole's like, I don't get it.
Yeah, but I don't blame Nicole for. I mean, it sucks. It's, you know, and if this ends up on the show, you're all going to see it. Like, it's not going to be fun to see Da'Vonne question this and to see Nicole continue to lie to her. Yeah. But if I were Nicole, I probably would too, because I'd be afraid of Da'Vonne blowing up my game on the way out the door. There's still a possibility, you know? So I don't necessarily, she's saying like, as a friend, but if you tell her the truth, what she does with that information is her choice. And she could potentially blow up your game if she's mad enough, you know? Yeah.
And to what you were saying about like, will Tyler reveal the vote in his goodbye message and stuff? Like, honestly, they shouldn't get involved. Like, they're not, I mean, Tyler could, because he was like, he could phrase it like, Da'Vonne, you kept telling me you voted for me, but I know you didn't because I'm in this alliance. Like if he just explains, hey, I'm in this alliance. I knew I was safe the whole time. Nicole definitely voted, not Dave. He could explain it that way, but otherwise stay out of it. It really should be Nicole being like, so sorry, just know for game, I had to flip on Ian and therefore I had to flip on you. It was me, not David. Like that's a way to do it. And it should be the goodbye message, not on her way out, because Da'Vonne should blow some stuff up.
She absolutely should.
If she gets that information before she walks out the door.
Well, and I wonder what she's going to blow up, because I got to believe it's something, We've already seen her talking to Kevin. She revealed the Slick Six to him. And she's kind of like breaking it down like, Kevin, I was in this Slick Six alliance with these people. And this is what's happening this week. Memphis was not in the Slick Six. Memphis or Christmas are really the only two people who could take the shot at me. And so Memphis took it. But now all those people that I was in the Slick Six with are voting me out. They're using Memphis to take the shot for them. So she's clearly pissed at those people. So I'm like, is she going to blow that up? Can she blow that up in any kind of meaningful way,
Right. I mean, that's the genius, and I use that word very lightly, of this like sub-alliance thing, a main alliance and sub-alliances. So Memphis may not know about the Slick Six, but like he's not going to care that they had side alliances. The point was you're loyal to the committee,
Yes.
Like Christmas might hold a grudge. She loves to do that. But for the most part, it's like, who cares that there was a Slick Six? Who cares that Da'Vonne thought she was in an alliance with any of these people, because she wasn't a part of the committee, period, end of story. So I don't know that she can really blow much up.
I know, because the thing is, like exactly your point. Like we've seen other instances of people finding out about certain alliances and ultimately they don't care, because there's been this group of, 6 to 8 people that regardless of whatever side alliances are happening, they've all stayed safe. So, okay, yeah, you had a Slick Six alliance, but it didn't mean anything. It didn't hurt me in any way. So who cares?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, basically, it just stinks that we're losing Da'Vonne this week.
I know. It really does. Okay, but like, let's talk about, because you said in the last video, you were like, next week, committee's going to crack. Something's happening. And it does feel like, well, but I have faith. This coming week, maybe this coming week, Sarah, is the week. Maybe this, that's what you meant. That's what you meant. This coming week is the week. But we are, I don't know if it's really going to crack this coming week, because there is definitely still talk about like, Kevin's got to be one of the noms at the next, nomination ceremony, this and that. But we are starting to just see these inevitable conversations among different pairs, and who do we actually trust, like, they're starting to evaluate the state of the committee, trying to assess what is the pecking order. Specifically, I'm thinking about this conversation with Cody and Nicole Franzel, and we know that they've been close this whole time, that they've had a final two. They tell each other everything. Now Cody's telling Nicole about the wise guys situation, just laying it all out there for her. That's great information for her to have. I didn't think that she would get that information. Yeah. But he's coming to her with this. And then they're also talking about how little they trust Danny. And that is another thing that I was like, whoa, okay, already we're getting this. Danny's got the loosest lips in the house, according to Nicole. It's like, okay.
She does. And everybody in the committee and more have figured that out. And Nicole is kind of the last one to figure it out. But that's interesting because Nicole is so close to Danny. But this whole time, Cody and Nicole have been tight. Like, they don't always get along. And Cody definitely has the upper hand in this duo, but they tell each other everything. And so I personally am interested to see how that continues and changes, because yes, there are cracks in the committee for sure. They are upset with Danny. Memphis is mad that Danny didn't throw this comp, just period and story, mad about that.
Yeah.
Okay. You're gross. he was already suspicious about Tyler on Friday. He was like, Tyler's first on my hit list. Now Danny might be, but the two of them. There's definitely, even Cody and Nicole, who are the closest to Danny, are concerned about Danny. They are all sort of, Cody's concerned about Memphis, doesn't really like the way Memphis plays. Yeah. There are definitely cracks. It just depends on who wins HOH this week.
Yeah.
If it's Christmas, no, Kevin or David go out. Period. Yeah. There's no budging whatsoever. But if Danny, maybe, if Tyler, maybe, there are some people in there who know they have to strike first.
Yeah.
You can't wait till final 6 and then be like, who's going to win HOH to get the chance to strike first? That's too dangerous.
Yeah.
And people like Tyler, who are very good at looking at the big picture and strategizing, aren't going to let it go to 6.
It's true. Yeah. But even Cody seems to be thinking that way too. Cody, we saw yelling at Enzo on the feeds, dude, the second half of this game is intense and you got to stop sleeping through it. Calling Enzo out for his extremely under the radar game. And Enzo's like, come on, man. I know, of course. Yeah. Second half of the game. That's when you got to play, man. Yeah. That's when you got to win some comps. He's getting Enzo fired up in that way. Yeah. But, Cody's thinking too, we can't just sit put until this magic number and then start to take shots. We got to be active and smart and think about this and find the exact right time to take these shots.
Yeah. And also Kevin and David, honestly, are two very great candidates.
Hello. Hello. You said it. Now we said it.
Why? I mean, honestly, once Da'Vonne is out, again, I'm mad Da'Vonne is going, but once she's out, I would 100% turn against my committee because I don't mind sitting next to Kevin or David.
No. And at this point, Kevin and David, I guess they're together, but are they a threat together at all? They're not really in with anybody else. Kevin is friendly with Danny, but they are not together in the game at all. I don't think anybody talks to Kevin and David game wise. So they're just there. Yeah.
I mean, Cody and Tyler have been pretty decent with David. Of making him feel like he's included so they can use him at any time. But honestly, for Kevin, it just is going to come down to who swoops him up at what moment. They're just going to be like, Kevin, here we go. We got to do this. And he'll be like, okay, great, let's go.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So, why in the world would I waste my time taking them out when I have to? The committee, if they wanted to vote as an alliance in the jury, they have the numbers. If the committee was like, we're all going to vote this one way, you want to sit next to somebody not in the committee. And that's Enzo, Kevin or David. And Enzo, you don't want to sit next to. Enzo wins unanimously. Come on.
Yeah.
So Enzo has to take himself there.
Yeah. Right.
I guess.
So things are not super great right now, but they will get interesting. They've got to. This group, we're so sick of this group being in power, but eventually there's going to be nobody left and they're going to have to, fight each other. So
yeah, Eddie, I think that this is a really interesting point because Cody does seem like he's dragging Nicole. And in no way is Nicole a Victoria. She's a winner. And I know she doesn't get as much respect as she should, but she should. And but because she's a winner, how many people want to give her a second win?
Exactly. I think that's exactly where Cody's head is at. Oh, this is great. No one's going to want to crown a 2-time BB winner. So she's a great person to sit next to as well. That's where his head is.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it doesn't always work. We saw Sandra win a second time.
True.
It's just not a given is what I'm saying. Yeah, but I kind of do feel like in this house.
I think Nicole knew that too. That's why she wanted Ian in the game so badly. They both knew that their best chance at winning twice was for there to be no other option, you know? And that kind of was the case. You bring up the Survivor example, with that final 3, Sandra, Parvati, and Russell, nobody was going to vote for Russell, and Parvati and Sandra were both previous winners. So it was either way you slice it, it was going to be a winner. And I think Nicole kind of knew that was going to be the case here too, that her best shot of winning twice was to sit next to another winner. So I'm sure she's scrambling now.
So many tears last week.
Yes.
What she was saying.
Yeah. She was crying for that. Yeah. Crying as that $500,000 check disappeared. Yeah.
Goodbye. Yeah. So that's our week. Yeah, we do have Zingbot to look forward to. Let's see. Christmas said, "Does America think I'm a cold-hearted bitch?" He said something about being cold.
Yeah. And there was something with Tyler being a liar, right? I feel like I heard talk about that. They're all like, "Oh, how much is Tyler lying in this house?" I think is one of the conversations I heard about the zings. Did I mishear that?
Now I can't remember, so I don't know. But I do remember Cody's IQ was like 10.
Yes. Yeah.
What was that?
And they're all... It's fun because they're all putting it together that like, oh, the zings are definitely related to how we're being portrayed on the show.
Exactly.
So that's why Christmas, I mean, Christmas would have taken it personally no matter what. But, you know, they're associating it to like, oh, this is how I look to America, you know?
Yeah. Nicole's had something to do with her voice. Not shocking.
Right.
And crying.
Yeah.
So she was like, I'm not surprised about that at all. I think those are the ones I remember. I don't remember anyone else's. I'm just hoping they're good. The last few years, we have not been impressed.
It's not been great. It's not been great.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's exciting to have Zingbot, but like I've been somewhat disappointed the last.
I agree. As much as I do love him, I will concur with that. And then we are excited to see who this neighbor is on Thursday.
You guys, what is this neighbor?
Don't get her hopes up. Who it is? I know. Don't get excited. Yeah.
But hopefully it's fun.
Yeah.
Okay, so we will be back Wednesday after the episode to talk about that and talk about any possible vote information we've gotten from the live feeds.
Yep.
And then Thursday we'll be back after the eviction episode.
Exciting stuff. So if you guys are watching us later, if you're not in the live chat, leave us a comment and tell us what you think about this Sunday episode that ended with the nominations. And if you are keeping up with these spoilers, tell us what you think
about how you feel about Da'Vonne as the target.
I know. Ugh. Every week we have to have this like party for, you know, the person that America was rallying behind.
I know, because we've just lost everyone we've cared about this entire time.
I know.
It's rough season. Yes, thank you everyone who joined us live. We appreciate it, and we'll see you next time.
All right, bye.
Bye.